Hello, Doug.
Hello.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Can you tell us your name, your full name, and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Doug Van Bebber. I am a writer-producer. I work in television. I'm currently on an ABC show called Hearts of Heroes.
Okay, excellent. And what are some of your work?
Um, well, I work mostly in television as a writer-producer, although I am also a screenwriter. I teach screenwriting. I have a number of scripts, and I'm currently pitching and sending out and, kind of hitting everything.
All right. And how did you get into writing?
I had originally started out as an actor, actually. I studied at Playhouse West, which I'm sure you are very well aware of. And I wanted to kind of come up with projects for myself. So I started doing a lot of sketch comedy and found that I sort of had an aptitude for writing. And from there, I did a short film. And the short film did very well on the film festival circuit and got picked up by HBO and Showtime. And I ended up, from that little short film, I ended up being hired at E! Entertainment as a writer on a show. And from there, they moved me on my next project and moved me into producing and kind of stayed doing that, although I still act every once in a while.
All right. So you started as an actor, then you switched into writing. Do you still act?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Actually, I just did a small part in my friend Sean Whalen's movie Crust.
Okay, excellent. And you also teach at Playhouse West. You teach at, you're an instructor over there.
Yes, I am. I substitute mostly for the acting portion because I work my show, which doesn't afford me the time to actually have my own class, but I teach a screenwriting class there, so that's at night, and I do that via Zoom.
Okay, excellent. And I think you're going to start a new class soon.
I am. Actually, there's a new class starting in February.
Okay, excellent.
First week of February.
All right, and if somebody's interested, they can go online.
If somebody is interested in taking the class, they can go to the Playhouse West website and look under screenwriting, and you can sign up through that.
All right, excellent. So if I ask you, where does Doug find inspiration for his stories and characters?
That's a good question because inspiration can really come from anywhere. There have been times when I have heard something funny that in a conversation with friends that I've based a sketch on, and that will in turn into a play. I did a full-length play a few years back with my friend Sean Whalen, who co-wrote it with me, but it was based on a sketch, and it was about the hottest new restaurant in LA where all the waiters are trained and licensed clinical psychologists. But it was literally based on something that I heard this waitress say back when I was waiting on tables, and it was so funny. And I said to her, "Wait, what are you, the waiter therapist?" And I thought that was funny, and so I made it into a sketch, then made it into a short film, and then we made it into a play. So it's just about listening and to the world around you. Sometimes I'll hear something on the news that will pique my interest. I tell my students, really be aware of the things that touch you, that move you, that make you laugh, that make you angry. That can come from a song, that can come from a story, that can come from the news, it literally can come from anywhere. I do one exercise where they have to write a whole short based on a song.
How do you work on the structure of the story?
Well, it depends on which kind of story you're writing. Screenplays, a feature-length screenplay has a very specific structure. Short films have a structure which is different than feature film. TV has a structure that is different from feature and short films. So it really depends on what kind of thing that you are working on. And you really kind of have to learn what the structure of each one of those things are before you start writing them. A lot of writers, especially new writers, will go, "Oh my God, I have this great story. I'm going to sit down and write it." It's like, well, do you understand what you need to do to set up your story? Do you understand, for instance, with a feature film, that you have to have an inciting incident that happens around page 12? Do you know where your break into Act 2 is? Do you know why that's a break into Act 2? Do you know what the midpoint is? A lot of times, especially newer writers, will be so excited and so earnest, but they forget that there's actually a craft to screenwriting. You have to know it in order to write a good script.
So there's like stages.
When you say stages, you mean?
The opening scene, then.
Yeah, I mean, there's without going into too much detail or about the structure of a feature film. Yeah, there are very, very specific page delineations and time delineations where things have your first 10 pages are setting up the world, setting up the character. Who are they? What is wrong with their world? What needs to change with their world? Then something happens that turns the story into another direction. And from there, you have the character who's stepping into a new world, which is your stepping into Act Two. People call them different things when I say stepping into a new world. Some different screenwriters, especially people who teach or write books about it, they're all very similar. I mean, like Save the Cat. I studied screenwriting at UCLA. Hal Ackerman, who was my professor, had a way of calling things certain things, but then you have like Sid Fields or Blake Snyder, who wrote Save the Cat. But they're all talking about the same thing. They just have a different way of saying it. So yes, there is a very, very specific structure to a feature film. And there's a structure to short film too, although because a short film can be 1 minute to 15, 20 minutes, it's not quite as delineated by, like, say, your page numbers. Like, you don't necessarily say in a short film, oh, by page 3, I have to be, my story has to be somewhere. Basically, with a short film, it's a little broader. It's setting up the world. What is the conflict? How does the conflict play out? What is the pinnacle of the story where one of the characters has to make a decision whether they're going to give into the conflict or they're going to overcome the conflict, and then you have your resolution. But in very basic terms, that's kind of how a short film plays out.
All right. So does it have to be related to the writer, or it doesn't have to be?
No, it doesn't have to be. But the writer should absolutely feel something for the story that they're telling. They should want to tell this story. A lot of times we're compelled to write things that maybe we never experienced or never gone through before. But for something in that story compels us to write it. It could be something subconscious, like when you were 5 years old, one of the kids threw sand in your face, and maybe you're not thinking about that, but that informs a story about a guy who feels like his boss is coming down on him and is disrespecting him, and he's so angry about it. But it could be, like I said, something from your childhood that you're not even thinking about.
You know how hard to get into the acting world in Hollywood. I mean, it's extremely hard. Is it the same thing for writers?
Oh, absolutely. But look, you have to do it, and you don't do it. Look, you don't become an actor and you don't become a writer. Hopefully you're doing it because there's a drive in you to do it. Going back to that short film that I did, I 100% did that because I starred in it, to showcase my acting, because I couldn't get an agent. I couldn't get an agent. I looked, I was in my mid-20s, and I looked just like every blonde-haired, blue-eyed actor out there. And so, okay, well, I'm going to write something that I can star in. So I wrote it. It did really well. While everybody said, oh, you're a good actor, but we were interested in you as a writer. We're interested in you as a writer. And so I never was counting on doing that. I just sort of followed that. But, it's sort of going back to your original question that it's difficult. What you need to do is, if you want to become a writer, you have to have something to show. You have to have a writing sample. You have to have something, and then you, just like an actor, you can go out and get an agent. That's probably as difficult as a writer as it is for an actor, but people do it. There are screenwriting competitions. There are different. You can shoot something and put it into a film festival that you are the writer on. That's how I got my first job, literally from doing that. But the one good thing, the one difference between being a screenwriter and being an actor, which is good if somebody actually wants to be a writer, they're very similar. Acting and writing are very similar. They come from, to me, they come from the same place. It's a yearning to express yourself. It's a yearning to feel like you have something to say, as a person. Not just I want to repeat lines. I really feel like I have something to say, or not just like writing random lines. But if you're an actor and you want to practice your craft of acting, you can invite a friend over and you guys can work on a scene together, and you can really find the meaning of the scene and really work on it, and that's great for your acting. However, once you've done that scene in your apartment, it's done. But if you are a writer and you want to work on your craft of screenwriting, you sit at your computer and you start writing.
Okay.
And you start coming up with a script. But then when you're done with it, you actually have something to show for it that you can use later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, becoming a writer or a screenplay writer or, TV, movie writer, it's something that you can learn.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you don't have to be, born with it.
Well, look, it's like any craft. There's a certain amount of, there's always a certain amount of talent, but there's also a certain amount of hard work of learning what the craft is, whether that is acting, dancing, playing an instrument. Of course, talent plays it, but you can learn it. But yeah, screenwriting, again, if you want to write a feature film, learn how you write a feature film. Don't just go, oh, I've seen movies and I'll just write a feature film. You will shoot yourself in the foot, I guarantee you. But it is something absolutely learnable, and it's something that you get better at. You constantly are getting better at it. The more scripts you read, the more writing that you do, the more you see what is effective on the page and how that translates to what ends up being on the screen.
So writing a movie is a little bit different than writing a play?
Yeah. I mean, there's structurally it's different. They always say, I'm sure people watching this have heard this, that screenwriting or filmmaking is a visual medium. You have to show what the character is doing. Playwriting is a lot of words, a lot of explaining, a lot of exposition, and that's sort of the main difference. Like you can show a lot more with less dialogue in a screenplay, so you don't need all of that dialogue that you may need in a play. That's why sometimes it is hard. You have a wonderful play. Sometimes it doesn't translate that well to screen, and vice versa. Because sometimes they try and make a film into a play, but they're relying on different resources, each one of them.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the process for character development?
Character development, that's a good question. A lot of people, like as far as screenwriting and coming up with their characters, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. There are people, I have my friend Kimberly, who's a wonderful producer, also a writer herself. She has a list of 350 questions that she asks about every character. And you go through, I mean, in that process, you go through and you answer every question. I personally don't feel like I need to know where my character necessarily went to junior high school, unless where they went to junior high school was in Germany and they didn't speak any English. Now that might inform a character, but just like, well, they went to junior high school. There's also, you can base your character on people that you know, or a type of person that you know. The important thing is that you as a writer need to absolutely know who this character is. You need to know how they would respond in this situation. You need to know how they speak. That's one of the biggest things that you hear from readers and people who are looking at scripts, and a lot of times comes from newer writers, that your characters all sound alike. Like all of your characters sound alike. Because really a writer is writing from themselves. And so it makes sense that, the characters are going to sound similar. That's why you as the writer have to know your character so well, how they would respond in every situation, how they speak, how the language that they use, could you please pass me that pen? That's one type of person. Hey, give me that pen. That's a different type of person. And that's just a small tweak of the line. And that's just by knowing who the character is and how the character sees the world and their point of view. So it really comes down to when you're writing, it is almost as if, and to me, it's almost as if you are acting in your head, but you're playing, and you're improvising in your head, but you're playing both characters. So you got to know which, what's this character's point of view? What's he gonna say when she says this? Ooh, that's gonna tick him off when she, throws his lamp on the floor, whatever it is, So yeah, it's really about just knowing in your heart, in your gut, who the character is.
And I guess that comes with experience.
Yeah, but it's also sitting with it. It's about sitting with your characters and not rushing the writing process.
Okay.
It's about really knowing who the character is. One thing that writers will get very eager to start writing.
Okay.
And they'll go, oh my God, I have that great idea for a story. It's about a guy who finds this egg, and the egg gives him the ability to read minds, or whatever crazy story they might have. So they want to start writing it. However, they haven't thought about who's this story happening to. Mm-hmm. Who's the most interesting character for this to happen to? Mm-hmm. You haven't thought about the character, because really, the character is the story. The character is the story. I can give you an example of, for instance, I've got this idea, and it's about this woman. It's a short film about a woman who goes in to a bank, and suddenly a bank robber comes in, and he takes her hostage. Okay, well, that might make a really great short film. However, what if I told you that she's this mousy woman who's never had to do anything for herself, and now she's in this very terrifying situation? That's one story. What if I told you she's an undercover FBI agent? She's got a gun in her purse, and she can't let him know that. That's a different story. What if I told you she's a ditzy social media influencer, and she knows this is going to help her feed, or whatever they call that crap?
Isn't
She's going to get more hits. Each one of those, the character is going to dictate where that story is going to go. That's why I say the character is a story.
So how does the character influence the plot?
Well, like I said, if you have character, when you know your characters, they're all going to behave in different ways. A tough mafioso dude is going to act different than a timid, office worker. So the mafioso or the macho guy, he's going to ask a girl out on a date. He's going to be confident. So that story is going to play out differently than the timid guy who probably hasn't been on a date in 10 years. So that story is going to go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. So that's really about it. Like, again, it's really about knowing who your character is and how does that character influence. But also when you're thinking about the plot of your story, be thinking about who is the most interesting character I can put in this story.
Okay.
A young guy suddenly inherits his father's business. Well, okay, so he's maybe getting an a business degree from USC. And, well, yeah, that's a natural fit. He's now taking over the business. But that might not be as interesting as if this kid is a stoner drug dealer who sells pot, and now he's taking over a big business. So who is the most interesting person to put in that particular story, and who's going to tell, and not just who's most interesting, who is going to tell the story for you as the writer to make the point that you're trying to make when you get to the end of your piece?
Nice.
What are you trying to say?
Okay, what are you trying to convey to the reader?
Yes.
To the viewer.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you view on AI?
It's a little scary for writers. I've seen what it can do. I've seen it put out of work a lot of people, not necessarily writers at this point. My feeling about AI is the point that it's at right now, all AI can do is cull all of this massive amount of information that's out there and mimic what they know as an algorithm to spit at something out. At this point, AI doesn't have a heart, a soul, an imagination, a desire to tell a story. When that happens, bye-bye writers. But for now, really all they can do is be a tool that I know actually producers who use it as a tool to go, okay, I'm trying to make my script say this, da-da-da-da-da. But at this point, I don't know that that AI has the capability to actually formulate an idea for a story, to come up with a character. You can tell it what to do, and it will use, like I said, use whatever information it can. You know, I want it to be a romantic comedy, and the tone is this, this, and this, and the lead character is this girl, and then put it together, and it just basically is mimicking. So until it can have an imagination and a heart and a soul, there will always be a need for storytellers.
Okay. So do you think producers or, big companies like Netflix or maybe Paramount are using AI and they're not using writers anymore?
I don't know exactly how they're using it. It's moving so fast. I mean, it could change next week. No, they're still employing writers. And like I said, everybody is in need of a great story. So until AI can create something like that, I think they're still writers, but there are certain kinds of writers that don't necessarily fall. People who write voiceovers. I do that a lot in my job. I think that might be kind of in jeopardy. So, which is why I'm trying to sell some things before that happens.
But for TVs and movies, it should be.
They're still, they're still in use.
There's time for that. Okay. And how do you collaborate with directors, producers, and other writers, during the working on a TV show or a movie?
Collaboration can be hard. It can be great, and it can be very difficult. And there's certain differences between, say, collaborating with another writer on a piece or collaborating with a director and a producer. I'll just start off with collaborating as a writer. You have to be able to work with somebody that you can be completely honest with. Like, I don't like that line. That doesn't make me laugh. I work really well with one of my writing partners who I wrote this play with, because we have known each other for so long that we're not going to get angry if I say to him, that's not funny, let's find something better. Or he says to me, that's kind of lame, that just seems kind of trite. Because, it's a very personal thing. Writing is just like acting is a very personal thing. Some ways it's more personal than acting, because writing, you're coming from yourself, and actors are coming from themselves, but there's something safer about playing a character as opposed to, I created this character. As far as collaborating with a director, say, you kind of have to put your ego aside, because you've worked on this thing for so long and you have such a vision. But the director's job is to fulfill that vision. And they're going to have their own vision and their own way that they see it, that it's going to be shot, and the way the mood of it and the colors and everything. So you do have to kind of put your ego aside and not think, unless you want to write and direct. And if you absolutely cannot collaborate, then you better be a writer-director. But if you collaborate with a director, you've got to be able to respect what they want to do, and make sure before you start collaborating that you're on the same page, or you understand their vision and how that hopefully works and meshes together with your script. On the flip side, I will say, when you've worked on something for so long, and then oftentimes you'll have people come in, read your script, and go, oh, let's change this, this, and this. And you realize that they don't really know what the hell they're doing. So you also have to be able to stand for the things that you say, no, that I'm not changing that. I'm literally not changing that. Your idea doesn't make my story better. It just makes it the way you want it to be. I always say this to writers. Be careful when somebody reads your script, whether that's a producer, director, or just your friend, and they're going to give you notes. And it's hard to discern, but make sure that they're going to give you a note that is going to make your script better and not the way they want it to be. I can't tell you, and it's hard to tell the difference sometimes when somebody's giving you a note. But oftentimes people will just go, I wish that he was a CEO of a corporation as opposed to the coach of a softball team.
Sure.
Why? I don't know. I just really like CEOs or whatever. It's just the way they saw it. It's like, well, that didn't make my story better. That's just the way you wanted it to be. And if you want it to be that story, go write that story. But that's not the story I wrote.
Okay. So does the, like Netflix or Paramount or Warner Brothers, do they hire more than one writer for the TV show or the movie, or is it only one writer?
For TV shows, there's generally what they call a writer's room. So there'll be a staff of writers. If you're working on a big show, yeah, and these writers' rooms used to be a lot bigger. They're getting smaller and smaller, but you need multiple people writing on a show when you've got to crank out an episode a week.
Okay.
With a screenplay, generally, they'll purchase a script, and they'll purchase it from the writer. Now, one thing they can do is turn around and say, we love this idea, we see it going in a different direction, they pay you off, and they hire another writer, and it becomes a completely different story. If you don't want that to happen to your script, you better not sell it. If you're okay with that, great. Sell your script, and they'll do whatever they want, and you'll just walk away with a big check.
And do you have any habits that help you stay creative and productive, or as a writer and an actor?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Because of my job, I'm constantly writing, constantly creating. However, I'm not. I wish I could say I'm really prolific, but I'm not. Mostly because so much of my time is working on the shows that I work on for my bread and butter. But one thing I do, and this is something I could tell anybody, any young artist, whether they're an actor or a writer, be working on a number of different things. That's what I do. I always have different projects I'm working on, because when I was younger, I would get so passionate about this one project that I wanted to do and I had to do, and for whatever reason, it would fall apart. And then suddenly I'm like, well, what do I do now? Oh my God, what do I do now? If you're working on different things at all different times, and this one's at this level, and this one's going to go, but this one needs more development. If something happens, and your short film that you want to shoot, you found out you can't get your location for another 6 months, and so you've been working on it for this long, and now if you have something else, you go, okay, cool, I'm going to work on this play, or I'm going to work on the screenplay, or I'm going to put together another short film, or I'm going to do something else. Always have those other things that you're doing.
The ultimate question, I guess, is how do you sell a script?
Oh, if I knew that, I would be very, very rich. Selling a script, well, there's sort of, what are the steps that I think the question is more, what are the steps you can take to sell a script? So, obviously, you need to have a script.
Okay.
You got to have a good script. Nobody's going to buy a terrible script. So make sure that you have a great script. Now, the things that you can do with that script, you can put it into screenplay competition. If it gets noticed, especially in a big one, you can turn and maybe get a manager, maybe get an agent. You can also, again, if you have a short script, make it into a film or make it into a web series. People have actually bought web series and developed them into something else. But the other thing, and this is just the hustling part of it, let anybody who reads your script read your script. If you know anybody whose sister's an agent, or their brother's a director, or their mom is a casting agent, this is a really small town, believe it or not. That's why you always got to be careful at a restaurant that you're not saying something bad about someone, because literally everybody knows everybody.
That's true.
So if you allow people to read your script, you go, oh, you know what? I know so-and-so. And you go, I never knew you knew so-and-so. Oh, yeah, well, he used to date my sister, you know. So let people read. Just put your script in the hands of people who will read it. This happened to me number of years ago, maybe about 10 or so years ago. I was hired to write a short film specifically for this actress who was represented by this manager. The manager hired me because he had heard about me and I came referred. And so he hired me to write the short film, which I did. He loved the short film, paid me to write it. But while I was in the room with him, he was just asking about myself, and he happened to represent a very, very well-known A-list actress. He was producing partners with her. And he said, oh, well, what else are you working on? And I said, well, I have this romantic comedy, blah, 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 blah. And I pitched it to him right there. And I knew he was going to think it. And he thought, that's a good project for my A-list actress who I wrote. He said, give it to me, send it to me. I sent it to him. He read it on Friday and optioned it from me on Monday. Due to circumstances that were not under my control, the film never got made, but I made money. I had it under option. And it was just because I wasn't afraid to let him read it. I wasn't afraid to tell him about it. So it's just about peddling, you know, getting your stuff out there.
Okay. So advertise as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And write as much as you have. Have as much in your arsenal as possible, because you can have one great script, and what will often happen, and it happened, I have a manager, and my manager will send a script over, and they'll go, oh my God, this project is not right for our company, but we love the writer and his voice, his point of view. What else does he have? Oh, he's got this. Okay. That is kind of how it works. So if you're just relying on that one script, that's great. If you've got a great script, have some other things. At least have a pitch for something else that you're going to do.
Okay. And can you just, real quick, just walk us through your class and, from the beginning to end, just real quick, just for the people to know?
It is a beginning screenwriting class where we cover basically short film screenwriting, but we go over the basics of actually the mechanics of screenwriting, your slug lines, your stage directions, how to write dialogue, how you structure, just the nuts and bolts of how you structure a screenplay. But then we get into things that are more creative, like what is the structure of a short film? It's a 3-month class, and by the end of the 3 months, the writers have numerous scripts because they write every week. Every week they write a new short film. It may not be a completed short film, but it's always the beginning of one, and sometimes it is a short film. I can't tell you how many times people have done an exercise in my class, turned around and made it into a play, or made it into a short film that they did, just from an exercise. And the exercises aren't necessarily designed to give you a completed short film, but they were so inspired by whatever it was that they were writing that they ended up writing something really great. And I go shoot that. Go shoot that thing. So yeah, so it's really about learning how to write a short film.
Okay, and the ideas for the film, you give it to them, or they have
No.
They have to come up with them?
It's 100% from them, but I give them very specific exercise to do, and I'm not going to go into them. Yeah. But they know their marching orders when they when they have to go off and write. They know it's not just because I know writing is very scary, especially for beginning students. So it's not like, oh, go write a script and come back in and show it to me, because they'd be like, I don't know, I don't even know what to write. I've never written anything. But when I tell them, you're going to write a scene that has this element, go deal with it. Or I'll, tell, like I said, like a song. Write a story that is inspired by your favorite piece of music, whatever, and try and figure out why that piece of music inspires you so much. And it doesn't have to be about what the song's about, as long as you capture the tone of what the song is. It can be based on one line on the song. It can be based on just the music. I had a really, really wonderful screenwriting student who was also an acting student at Playhouse. And he came in and he wrote this great short film about these two hitmen, but one of them was like doing coke the whole way, and he was like, and he ends up shooting and killing the guy. Or they weren't supposed to kill him; they were just supposed to shake him down. But he was so coked out, he shot the guy, and it was a very funny, actually a very funny screenplay. But and then I had him play the music, and it was this really kind of this jazzy, but really kind of frenetic jazz song. And he said, "That's great." So what was he? He goes, "Just feel this music, just like felt like a guy who like all coked up and good." And he said, "Just from that, I just wrote this." So.
Oh wow. Do you have any advice for any, for the aspiring writers, actors?
Yeah. One of the things that I feel really, really strongly about for beginning writers, outline your story before you start writing. First off, learn the structure that you're writing in. If you're writing a short film, know why it's a short film. If you're writing a feature, know why the story is a feature film. Outline, 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 outline. And the reason why is because you have to be able to know, as I spoke earlier, you have to know where your story falls. You have to know did I cover everything, especially with a feature film. A feature film are really daunting to write. You have your A storyline, but then you've got your B and your C storyline that are weaved around it. And if you try and take that on, it's so big, and without outlining it, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, "Oh, Doug, will you read my screenplay?" And they're my students. And so, like, for instance, my acting students. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, "Did you outline this?" That's my first question. "Did you outline?" No, I didn't need to because I saw the whole story in my head. And I'm going, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't. I guarantee you thought you saw the whole story in your head." We all can see the first act, and we all can see the third act, which is how with the big chase, and we all know that. I guarantee you that 60 pages that's between the first act and the third act, you don't know what's happening, because you're going to sit down and you're going to be lost. And you're absolutely going to be lost. My professor at UCLA used to say, Act 2 is where great screenplays go to die. And what he means is that people will start to write without putting the proper work into it, and then they'll just get confused and frustrated. You're like, "I don't know where I am." If you have it up on the board, I use a board. Like literally every card is every scene. So I can actually count and go, do I have too many scenes? Do I need this scene? I can pull that card off. I don't need this scene. This scene covers whatever. And when people don't, they will have scenes that don't go anywhere. They will have scenes where characters are just talking. They will have scenes that we already heard this information before. Why are we hearing it again? So, yeah. So just to wrap up, that is my biggest piece of advice to any writer is know what you're writing before you sit down to write.
Anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I would say, the real point of being a writer or trying to make a career as a writer is you have to write. And that's such a cliche. Well, just write. Learn the craft. Learn what you're doing so that when you sit down, you know what you're doing. Take a class. It doesn't have to be my class. It doesn't have to be a big expense. You don't have to go to college to go get a screenwriter. There's a lot of good screenwriting classes. Read screenwriting books. However, I would say the classes where you are actually have hands-on experience writing is going to be your best shot at really learning how to do it. You know, an actor can read a book on acting, but until they get up on stage, that doesn't help them much. They know the theory, but they don't know the feeling and what it takes to really do it. So, yeah, learn your craft.
Okay. All right. Well, Doug, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.